I mind my own business. In Asia, I was taught to think about the collective good rather than just individual wants. This stayed with me, especially when wearing masks became normal. Though mask mandates have been lifted where I live, about 50–60% of people still wear them in public. It's part of our culture now, not political or controversial. That's why I was surprised when a stranger commented on mine. I live in a 6-story apartment complex with my husband. Recently, management changed their policies so deliveries can't come to our doors anymore. We have to pick up packages from the lobby. This day, I wasn't feeling well. I had a cold and had been coughing since morning. My husband was in worse shape, bedridden for 2 days with flu symptoms, fever, cough, and chills. We'd both tested negative for COVID using antigen tests, but we were still being cautious. I had just gone to the lobby to pick up medicine I'd ordered for us, and I was wearing my mask while waiting for the elevator. That's when this man approached me. I'd never seen him before. He looked at my mask and said it was a beautiful day, questioning why I would deprive myself of good oxygen. I didn't respond because the elevator arrived then. We both stepped inside and I felt annoyed. Who is this person to offer advice about my choice to wear a mask, especially when I was sick? I was tired from being ill and taking care of my husband. Maybe it was fatigue or pettiness, but I decided to comply with his suggestion. When the elevator doors closed, I removed my mask and smiled at him. I told him he was right and said I had a bad cold and the fresh air felt good. He stiffened and backed away in the small elevator, but I wasn't done. I continued by telling him about my husband, who also had the flu and had been in bed, adding that I hoped it wasn't a contagious virus. He wouldn't look at me anymore. He just stared at the elevator doors. I felt satisfied but also guilty. The elevator ride wasn't long. He got off at the 4th floor without a word, while I continued to the 6th floor where our apartment is. Back home, I had mixed feelings. It felt satisfying to see him uncomfortable after he commented on something that wasn't his business, but I felt guilty about possibly exposing him to my virus. I put my mask back on when I entered our apartment, not wanting to spread germs to my husband. As I gave him his medicine, I told him about what happened. My husband said the man should learn to mind his own business, and that this might teach him not to comment on strangers' choices. I told my husband I was worried the man might get sick because of me. My husband said I wouldn't have taken off my mask if the stranger hadn't suggested it. He added that the man chose to get into an elevator with someone wearing a mask during flu season. I knew he was right, but the guilt stayed. I'm not the type to put others at risk just to prove a point. Part of me hopes this man learned about making comments to strangers. Next time he sees someone in a mask, he might remember our elevator ride and keep his opinions to himself. I haven't seen him since. I wonder if he got sick or is avoiding me. Either way, I wear my mask when I leave our apartment, not because I care what anyone thinks, but because it's right when you're ill. I've worked at a small local shop for just a couple of years now. When the sickness hit its peak, everything changed. Most of us were worried about catching it, but our owner had extra reason to be cautious. His wife had just given birth to their first child, a little boy only about a month old. That Tuesday started like any other pandemic day. Mask checks at the door, hand sanitizer stations filled, the whole routine. Our owner happened to be in that day, which was unusual since he'd been mostly working from home to minimize exposure risk for his newborn. Around mid-morning, she walked in. No mask, not even dangling from one ear or pulled down under her chin like some people did when they thought no one was watching. Just barefaced and browsing like it was 2019. The owner spotted her immediately. He approached her with that customer service voice we all perfect in retail. He politely asked her to wear a mask while in the store. She looked at him like he'd asked her to strip naked. She said she didn't have to wear a mask because she had an exemption. She immediately started digging through her purse and pulled out the most obvious fake document I'd ever seen. Just a plain sheet of printer paper with some text on it. No letterhead, no official seal, nothing laminated or official looking. The owner apologized but told her that she would need to leave if she refused to wear a mask. That's when she lost it. She shouted that she didn't have to wear a mask because she had an exemption. Her voice got louder as she waved the paper in his face. I should explain that where we live, the law says masks are mandatory, and you can get fined for not wearing one. Some people do have legitimate exemptions, but that just means the police can't fine you. There are no official exemption certificates. You simply tell an officer you have one if stopped. More importantly, private businesses can refuse service to anyone for any reason. Our owner didn't even acknowledge her pathetic printout. He explained that, as a private business, they had the right to refuse service. He mentioned his newborn son at home, who was only a month old, and pointed out that even with an exemption, she could still spread the virus. She angrily accused him of discrimination and claimed he couldn't refuse her service. The owner patiently clarified that he wasn't discriminating against any protected class. He was simply asking all customers without masks to leave, regardless of why they weren't wearing one. They went back and forth a few more times before she finally stormed out, muttering threats about lawsuits and bad reviews. That afternoon, our phone rang. I answered it, completely unprepared for what followed. I gave our standard greeting. The woman immediately launched into a rant about being rudely kicked out earlier. She threatened to sue unless we sold her what she came in for at a steep discount. I cut her off mid-sentence. I explained that I had witnessed the whole thing and she had no grounds for a lawsuit. I pointed out that her fake paper meant nothing, and as a private business, we had the right to refuse service to anyone for any reason. I started to list a third point when she began screaming again. She yelled about having the right to shop anywhere she wanted. I tried repeatedly to get her to stop saying stop, with increasing volume each time, but she continued to shout about not being made to wear a mask. I slammed the phone into the receiver as hard as I could, multiple times. I wasn't about to get into a screaming match with this woman. When I looked up, I saw the owner staring at me from across the store. I quickly explained it was the same woman from earlier, and he nodded understandingly. Then the phone rang again, same number on the caller ID. I answered and asked if she was ready to calm down. She called me extremely rude and demanded to speak with the manager. I told her that I was the manager. There was a beautiful moment of silence. After a pause, I suggested she could speak to the owner if she wanted. She quickly agreed that she would. It was at this moment I realized she had no idea that the man she argued with in the store was actually the owner. I passed the phone to him with a smile, hoping he'd have some fun with her like I would have. But he's more professional than I am. I couldn't hear what she was saying, but I could tell from his responses that she was threatening to leave negative reviews online. He acknowledged her frustration but reminded her that, as he had explained in the store earlier, the business had the right to refuse service. He revealed that he was the same person she had spoken with that morning. Before ending the call, he mentioned that while he wouldn't stop her from leaving a negative review, we were a small business and such reviews could really affect us, so he hoped she would reconsider. When he hung up, he just shook his head and went back to work. The funny thing is, she never did leave that review. I check our online ratings regularly, and nothing negative ever appeared about masks or exemptions. I guess even entitled people sometimes realize when they've lost a battle. Or maybe she was too embarrassed when she found out she'd been arguing with the owner twice in one day. Either way, it was a small victory in the exhausting pandemic retail wars. My family had just moved to a new apartment that was bigger, but somehow cost less than our previous place. With all the money we saved, we decided to replace our appliances and home decor. After spending the entire day unloading our storage unit and carrying everything up to our second-floor apartment, I was completely exhausted. But I still had to go to Walmart to get everything we needed for the new place. My 10-year-old son came with me. He's tall for his age and looks older than he really is, which became important later. When we arrived at Walmart, the place was packed. The checkout line stretched all the way into the clothing section. While we shopped, my son started playing Pokemon Go on my phone, following behind me as I pushed the cart. After we finally got everything we needed, we headed to checkout. I walked around looking for the shortest line. As I did, I passed by this woman standing in the clothing section. She wasn't in any line but was staring at the checkout area. My son and I got in line behind a nice customer about 10 feet away from where that woman was standing, and we waited patiently. About 5 minutes later, my son got excited about catching a new Pokemon and asked if I wanted to try catching one too. Since the line was moving slowly, I figured why not. He handed me the phone, and I started playing. As I was trying to catch a Pokemon for the second time, I noticed something from the corner of my eye. That woman from before had moved her cart to the front side of mine. When I looked up, she had her back to me, but was peeking my way, trying to act casual as if I didn't exist. At first, I didn't say anything. I thought maybe she was looking at clothes or waiting for someone. I kept playing the game with my son, but started paying more attention to our surroundings and to this woman. When the nice customer ahead of us moved forward in line, I did too. But then I noticed the woman inching closer and closer between me and the nice customer. When she thought I wasn't paying attention, she tried to push her cart in front of mine. I pushed my cart forward to block her, and then she pushed her cart right into mine. I politely told the woman that we had been in line first and pointed out that she had been standing far away when we got in line. She denied this, claiming she had been in line before us but had stepped away briefly to find a manager, insisting this was still her spot in line. I explained to her that wasn't how waiting in line worked, and that even if she had been in line before, she had clearly left it. I pointed out that she had been nowhere near the line when we arrived, and although there had been a manager near where she was standing, she hadn't spoken to anyone during the 20 minutes we'd been waiting. I reminded her that everyone was in a hurry to leave and asked her to wait her turn at the back of the line. She questioned how I could know what happened when I had been looking at my phone. She insisted she had been in line first, behind the person ahead of us, and accused me of cutting in front of her. She threatened to report me to the manager, claiming I had cut in line and threatened her, and warned she would have me thrown out and banned from Walmart. I told her to go ahead and do whatever she wanted, but she wasn't going to cut in front of me no matter what. She cursed at me, called me a witch, and gave me the middle finger before starting to walk away. As she left, she tried to ram me with her cart, but my son stepped between us to protect me and got hit in his side instead. I called out loudly that she had just hit my son with her cart and called her crazy. I told her if she couldn't wait in line, she shouldn't come to Walmart, and called her Karen. She walked off. The nice customer ahead of us was now at the register unloading their cart when Karen returned with a manager. The manager approached me and asked for my attention. When I acknowledged him, he explained that Karen had told him I caught her in line and threatened to beat her up if she didn't shut up and leave. He said they didn't tolerate that behavior at Walmart and asked me to leave the store. I was about to explain the truth to the manager when Karen interrupted. She added to her accusations, claiming I had hit her with my cart and demanding I be arrested for assault. She insisted the police be called, claiming I had assaulted her and threatened her life simply because she wouldn't let me skip ahead in line. The nice customer, who had just finished checking out, turned around looking irritated at Karen's lies. She explained she had waited in line for 30 minutes, and at no point had Karen been behind her in line. She clarified that I had never threatened Karen, but rather Karen had threatened me and rammed her cart into mine. She described how Karen had threatened to have me removed and banned for not letting her cut in line, and how Karen had hit my son with her cart. The customer defended my right to stand my ground. The manager looked confused and asked if this was true. My son and I both confirmed it was. I started explaining what happened, but Karen kept interrupting me. Karen accused everyone of lying, called me a dumb witch and a liar, and demanded I be arrested immediately. The manager tried to calm the situation, starting to say they would get to the bottom of it, but Karen cut him off, shouting that she wanted me arrested right away. The manager warned Karen she was making a scene, and if she didn't calm down and lower her voice, he would ask her to leave. Karen expressed disbelief that she might be kicked out after I had supposedly threatened her life and assaulted her. She demanded to speak to his manager. The manager told her that he was the general manager of the store, and if she wanted to speak to anyone above him, she would need to call corporate. He gave her one more warning to calm down before he would trespass her from the store. Karen accused the manager of running the store poorly, protecting violent people who attack customers while kicking out victims. She threatened to have him fired. The nice customer jumped in, telling Karen she wasn't the victim, my son and I were. She accused Karen of threatening and attacking us because she got caught trying to skip the line. Karen told the nice customer to mind her own business and called her a witch, saying no one had asked for her input. The customer responded that it was her business since she had witnessed everything, and she would always speak out against people like Karen. Karen started to insult the nice customer with a crude name but was cut off by the manager, who had had enough. The manager, not wanting to deal with Karen anymore, called the police to escort her out of the store and trespass her. Soon, a police officer arrived. The officer greeted the manager and asked what the problem was. The manager began to explain the dispute, but Karen interrupted. Karen immediately told the officer that I had threatened her life and attacked her for no reason. She insisted on pressing charges and having me arrested immediately. My son spoke up, telling the officer that Karen was lying and had actually attacked his mother and him because we wouldn't let her cut in line. Karen lashed out at my son, calling him pathetic and referring to me as a violent witch. My son defended me, saying I was kind and caring, and that Karen was the violent one who couldn't control her language around children and had hit a minor with her cart. Karen denied hitting anyone, but the nice customer confirmed she had witnessed the whole thing and backed up our version of events. Karen insisted we were all lying and claimed she was the one who had been attacked. The officer asked the manager if there was security footage of the incident. The manager confirmed they had it ready, as their loss prevention team had pulled it up while waiting for the officer to arrive. Karen started to look nervous and made excuses about needing to leave, saying she was in a hurry. The manager pointed out that she had been the one who insisted on calling the police, and reviewing the footage would only take about 5 minutes. Karen repeated that she really needed to go and was in a rush. The manager noted that she hadn't even checked out yet, and the wait was likely 20 to 30 minutes, so there was plenty of time. Karen tried to protest further, but the officer cut her off, informing her that she was being detained and couldn't leave. Karen objected, claiming she had done nothing wrong and had rights. The officer explained that based on the information he had, she had assaulted a minor with a weapon, which constituted a third-degree felony. Karen tried to argue again, but the officer shut her down, telling her there would be no more arguments and she needed to sit quietly while they reviewed the video. 10 minutes later, Karen was arrested for assault of a minor in the third degree, reckless endangerment of a child, disturbing the peace, and she was trespassed from all Walmart stores. As she was escorted out of the store in handcuffs, she continued yelling that she had never hit a minor. The officer reminded her that my son was only 10 years old, and she had assaulted him with her cart. He suggested she exercise her right to remain silent, as everyone had had enough of her foul language. The officer took statements from everyone and then took Karen away. The manager apologized for our experience and gave my son and me a $50 gift card each. If convicted, Karen could face 5 years in prison, a fine of $10,000, or both. Update 1. Yesterday I got a visit from Child Protective Services. They came to take pictures of the bruising on my son's side, which were light bruises. Today I got a call from the state prosecutor's assistant. Between the visit and the call, I now have more insight into what's happening. Karen was already being investigated by CPS prior to our encounter. She hasn't really been a good mother to her children. From what I understand, they couldn't tell me much, but the prosecutor is changing her charge from aggravated assault to aggravated battery. Honestly, my son and I are ready to move on from this. Update 2. Sorry it took me so long to update. Karen was convicted of aggravated battery and was sentenced to 21 months in prison, followed by 6 months of probation and 100 hours of community service. I'm just very glad it's all finally over, and we no longer have to give it any more thought. We are ready to finally move on from this unpleasant experience. This all started during the early days of the pandemic lockdown, when everything was strict and scary. My roommate tested positive for coronavirus, which meant I had to do the responsible thing: cancel my holiday plans and isolate for 2 full weeks. This was before we had those self-testing kits available at home, so I just had to follow what the government told us to do. Those 14 days were absolutely miserable. Not only was I stuck inside my flat, but it was freezing cold outside. The temperatures dropped so low that weird things started happening, like the adhesive on my parking permit failing. One cold night, it simply detached from my windscreen and fell into the footwell of my van. I didn't notice since I wasn't driving anywhere. When my isolation finally ended, I walked out to my van feeling that sweet sense of freedom. But what did I find? A parking ticket slapped on my windscreen from the previous night. I was furious. My van hadn't moved in 2 whole weeks. The same parking attendant had walked past it every single day and suddenly decided to ticket me just because they couldn't see my permit. The fine was £75. I immediately called the parking company to sort this out. I explained to the customer service representative that I just found a parking ticket on my van despite having a valid monthly permit. I told them it had fallen off my windscreen during the cold weather. They asked for my permit details to check their system. After I gave them all my information, they confirmed what I already knew, that my £25 monthly permit was fully paid and up to date. They acknowledged they had all my vehicle details in their system. When I asked if they could cancel the ticket, they refused. They insisted that the rules on their signs were very clear. If you don't display a valid permit, you will receive a fine, no exceptions. I tried to explain about my coronavirus isolation and how the permit fell off during the freezing weather. I pointed out that their company knew I had paid, but they just repeated that I must display my permit at all times. I refused to accept this answer. I escalated the call, spoke to managers, wrote emails, and even threatened to contact consumer protection groups. But they wouldn't budge. Their system was apparently designed to be completely inflexible. Due to my stubbornness and their late payment penalties, the fine eventually grew to nearly £200, which I had to pay. I was sitting at home still seething about the whole situation when a thought suddenly hit me. If they weren't checking their system and only looking for a physical permit in the windscreen, why was I even paying for it monthly? The next day, I called them up. I told the customer service agent that I wanted to cancel my monthly parking permit. When they asked why I was canceling, I simply said it was for personal reasons and that I didn't need it anymore. They processed my cancellation without any issues. But here's the clever part. I kept the old physical permit. It was still in my van, faded but visible. That was about 21 months ago. The permit is now so bleached from sitting in the sun that you can barely make out the details on it. But it still looks like a valid permit to any parking attendant walking by. They just see a piece of paper in my windscreen that looks official enough. Meanwhile, I've saved £25 every month for almost 2 years now. That's over £500 I've kept in my pocket. The same parking attendant who gave me that unfair ticket now walks past my van daily and sees what appears to be a valid permit. It turns out their strict no exceptions policy works both ways. They don't check their system when issuing tickets, and they apparently don't check it when looking at permits either. Their rigid adherence to the rules ended up costing them far more than if they'd just been reasonable with me in the first place.